Shalom, Israel. Grace and mercy from God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, be unto you. All praises to the Most High that we made it another week learning the Word. Of course, I just want to start by giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, and I do so by His Holy Spirit, without which we would have no understanding at all. So, with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and check, make sure everything's functioning properly. I do just want to pull this up real quick because I know this is the first scripture we're going to hit like we do every week. So I keep pressing the wrong thing. Y'all bear with me. All right. Plus I got a couple of tabs open, so that does make it a little slower. But let me go ahead and check. YouTube, make sure y'all can see and hear me. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, but let me see. It says we're live. YouTube, make sure y'all can see and hear me. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, but praise the Most High for that one. Let me see. Facebook should be live there as well. Open, so that does make it a little slower, but okay. Praise the Most High. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this on silent, at least on vibrate, and I'll bring this down and we'll go from there. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15, as we read every week. 2 Timothy 2 and verse 15, it says, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." And that's the point. That's the goal. That's the aim, is to rightly divide the word of truth. All right? And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you study, right? Showing yourself approved, not unto men, not in men's eyes, but in the eyes of the Lord. All right? So, with that, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I was here just kind of skimming over some of the chapter 11, because I know what chapter 11 is generally about, but as far as specifics, I had to refresh my mind, and still I'm not even quite there on the specifics. But we left off at Daniel 9. This is what I've really been meditating on this past week, trying to get this down. And all praises to the Most High, He revealed something to me concerning this prophecy here. That's where most of my attention has been this week. Because if y'all have been watching, y'all know that this week I'm going to try to wrap up the book of Daniel. I'm here at the end of chapter 9. I got through a lot of chapter 9 last week. But I told y'all I was holding off on this 70 weeks prophecy because I still didn't quite get it. But all praise to the Most High. Something clicked with me earlier this week. And I'm going to go ahead and get into that. Daniel 9 and 20, it says, "And whiles I was speaking," if y'all recall last week, Daniel was making his supplication, his prayer unto the Lord concerning Jerusalem and his people. All right, "and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God, for the holy mountain of my God. Yea, whiles I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation." Right, so that'd be around 6 p.m. Roughly. All right. "And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved." So just considering that in of itself, to be beloved like Daniel was, to be beloved of the highest the way that he was, as soon as Daniel started praying, the Most High sent Gabriel. He said, go get Daniel. Go talk to Daniel. All right? Go show him something. All right? "Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision." But yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy. We want to be beloved in that way by the Most High, where as soon as we start praying, the Most High ears perk up. You know what I'm saying? You start listening immediately. You know, it don't take much when you're beloved like Daniel was. And Daniel 9 and 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins. So listen to what he's saying here. Listen to what the angel Gabriel is saying here. To make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. All right? So that's the purpose. That's the purpose of these 70 weeks. All right? It's to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for the iniquity of Israel. All right? To bring in everlasting righteousness, and to anoint the most holy. All right? Of course, it says to seal up the vision and the prophecy, but you know, the points that I wanted to point out here, right? To make an end of sins, make reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, and anoint the most holy. All right? Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince, all right, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. Right? So I had a rough understanding of this for a few years, right? Knowing and understanding, because I heard years and years ago that these 70 weeks, right? Each day represents a year, right? So 70 weeks would be 490 years, right? So I knew that roughly that's from the time of the Persians to the time of the Romans, the time of Christ, right? But as far as specificities, I could never map it out. But all praise to the Most High, He revealed something to me earlier this week. But I did just want to check. Excuse me. I do just want to check some of my old notes. Is this newer or old? This is the old ones. See what I have written down. If I have anything revealing concerning the last bits of Daniel. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Because I wrote these a while ago. These old notes would have been last year, from what it's showing here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's just a general overview. There's nothing too much here. As far as the specificities of breaking it down. Okay, so that's interesting for what we may get to later, but I'll talk about that when we get to it. But as far as this is concerned, in Daniel 9, there was nothing too much breaking down. Like I said, earlier this week is when, as I was meditating on this, the Lord revealed something to me. As far as, there's a reason why it doesn't just say right here, because 7 weeks, obviously that's 7 weeks, 49 days. And 62 weeks, 62 weeks, that's 434 days. Right? There's a reason why it didn't just say 69 weeks. All right? There's a break here. There's a gap here. All right? So these 7 weeks would be 49 years, right? Because each day is a year in this prophecy. All right? So this would be these 49 years, because it says, no one understand, the going forth of the commandment, all right, to restore and to build Jerusalem, is from the Cyrus declaration to the Darius declaration. All right. So I'm going to point this out real quick in Ezra, in the book of Ezra in the Bible. When you read First Ezra in the Apocrypha, it also points out that Zerubbabel had something to do with that Darius declaration. But really, when you read the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah, and I guess this also applies to First Ezra and Second Ezra as well, it's talking about 2 separate generations, and that's why there's a break here. There's these 7 weeks is that first generation, Zerubbabel's generation, Jeshua the high priest generation, Haggai's generation, Zechariah's generation, right? So that's that generation. That's 7 weeks, all right? And so I'll deal with that first. The Cyrus to Darius, that's the 7 weeks, 49 years from Cyrus to Darius, all right? In Ezra 1, it says, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, because I've talked about this concerning Daniel for several weeks as far as the role that Daniel played in Cyrus's life, right? You read about that in Bell and the Dragon. Also, the timeline of Daniel when he kind of retires from his counselor role was in the first year of Cyrus, even though he lived a good little bit after that as well. All right. But when it says the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, and when you look on like this is general Wikipedia, which Wikipedia itself is not a source. I will tell you that. I've said that often. I try to say that as often as possible because it's a compilation of sources. So when you read here concerning Cyrus the second, this is the Cyrus that it's talking about, from 560 to 530. That's when he come to power within Persia. That's not when he took the throne from Babylon. That's not when he conquered Babylon. That was later. All right. Because first he had taken the power from the Medes. I don't know if it was necessarily taken or it was given him from the Medes. That's something I'm not necessarily familiar with. But he first did that to form this Persian-Median coalition, right? That's why I say maybe it was actually given. Maybe they reached an agreement. But then they went and later took Babylon, all right? That was around like 550, 540-ish, all right? So when it says the first year of Cyrus, I don't necessarily know. Well, I can almost confirm actually that it's not the first year that he got the mantle in Persia, but rather it's when he took the kingdom from Babylon. Because it said, what does it say on down here? Yeah. So in verse 2, I'll read the first verse and then the second verse. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth. Right, so that's when it says first year of Cyrus. That's why I say, well, that's when he took Babylon. All right, because he openly declares it, that the Lord had given him everything, right? All the kingdoms of the earth. And he hath charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. All right. So here's the proclamation, right? The Cyrus proclamation. As far as what year this specifically was, more than likely the same year when he took Babylon, or at least around that time. Let me look that up real quick. When did Cyrus the Great, not when he ruled, but when he conquered Babylon? At what point in his reign? Because it wasn't 560. It says 539. All right. It said in 539 BC. Right. So if we use that as a jumping off point, that takes us to let's say 49 years. All right. That takes us down to Darius. Right. Around 490. Right. Darius the First. Okay. So if we take those 49 years, that 7 days, that week takes us to Darius the First. Okay. And that would be, I believe it's in Ezra 6. Could be mistaken, but I just read this earlier this week. So y'all bear with me. So here you got Darius. So when you read the context, it's actually funny how this happened here, because Cyrus made the decree, right? So then you had these waves of Jews, waves of Israelites, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, as you read in Ezra 1, plus a remnant of the rest of the tribes, right? Go back to Judea to rebuild Jerusalem, rebuild the temple, all right? And then the heathen around them stop them, right? And they even get some of these other Persian kings, one of these other ones, the Cambyses or Bardiya, whoever, right, to stop the building, stop the construction, all right? But then the prophets Haggai and Zechariah encouraged the people And they say, what are you doing? The house is in disrepair. Jerusalem's in disrepair. Continue to work. Continue to do the work of the Lord. Continue to rebuild, right? To restore, as it said in Daniel 9, right? So then the people got back to work. Then the heathen around them sent out a letter to Darius saying, hey, they say that Cyrus made them give them a decree to do this. We think they're lying. Prove that they're lying, basically. Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house of the rolls, where the treasures were laid up in Babylon, and there was found at Achmetha, in the palace that is in the province of Medes, a roll. And therein was a record thus written: in the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be builded, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid. The height thereof 60 cubits, 60 cubits, 60 cubits. And the breadth thereof, three score cubits, right? 60 cubits. With 3 rows of great stones and a row of new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house. And also let the golden and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple, which is at Jerusalem, and brought unto Babylon, be restored. And brought again unto the temple, which is at Jerusalem, every one to his place, and placed them in the house of God. All right. So I'm going to jump down. Let's see. So this is the decree of Darius. No, I'm not going to jump down because this is where Darius actually gets to his decree. Now therefore, Tatnai, governor beyond the river, Shethar-boznai, and your companions, the Apharsachites, which are beyond the river, be ye far from thence. Hey, stop messing with the Jews who are building this temple. Let the work of this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God in its place. Moreover, I make a decree what ye shall do to the elders of these Jews for the building of this house of God, that of the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river, forthwith expenses be given unto these men, that they be not hindered. Right? So use tax money to help these people out. Right? Use the king's funds. He's paying out his own wallet to help these Jews build this house. And that which they have need of, both young bullocks and rams and lambs for the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the appointment of the priests which are at Jerusalem, let it be given them day by day without fail. Right? Give them everything they need to make sacrifices, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet savors unto the God of heaven, and pray for the life of the king and of his sons. Right? So, these Persians, they were pagans, right? So they had multiple different gods. So Darius is like, hey, get them to pray to their God for us, right? Because they're going to offer sacrifices. Clearly Cyrus knew of this God. They held Cyrus to great esteem, naturally, because he did so much for their empire, right? So Darius is like, hey, let them pray to this God. Let them offer sacrifices to this God so that they can pray for us, right? And when you get to the New Testament, Paul is talking about praying for the king and praying for the kings of the lands that we live in, and people get all bent out of shape about that among Israelites for some reason, even though that's right here in the scriptures, in the Old Testament as well. Also, I have made a decree that whosoever shall alter this word, let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill for this. So anybody try to hinder it, destroy that person, destroy his house, right? Destroy his goods. And the God that hath caused his name to dwell there, destroy all kings and people that shall put to their hand to alter and to destroy this house of God which is at Jerusalem. I, Darius, have made a decree, let it be done with speed. So we see there that you had the Cyrus decree and the Darius decree. All right, that's the 49 years that took place between them both. All right, between the Cyrus decree and the Darius decree, that's 7 weeks. But then there's a gap, right? Because the temple was built shortly thereafter, right? But it's not just about building the temple, right? And Jerusalem. It also says the street and the wall, but it's not even about that. It's about restoring, all right? It's about restoring. So there's a break, there's a gap, and 62 weeks, all right? So that's 434 days, which translates in this prophecy to 434 years. All right. I'm going to read the next part, and then I'm going to get into when that started. All right. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks, after those 434 years, shall Messiah be cut off, right? Shall the anointed of God, shall the Christ, in other words, Messiah is the same word as Christ, all right? Just in two different transliterations, all right? Shall Messiah be cut off, meaning die. But not for himself. He didn't die for himself, all right? And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. All right, so let's just deal with the part where it says the 62 weeks, and after the 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, right? So this is from, or I should say the end of this 434 years is when Christ is put to death, all right? So let's talk about the beginning of this 434 years. Remember, it's about restoring, all right? So this 434 years starts in that second generation, all right, of Ezra and Nehemiah, all right? As far as the restoration is concerned, I'll get this here in Ezra chapter 8, all right? Because remember, what the point of these 70 weeks is for: to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity, right? And to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy. And that's actually key too. I'm about to read that. To seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. All right. So Ezra 8, let's talk about restoring a bit. All right. Because they had the temple builded during the reign, I think it said during the reign of Artaxerxes, when they actually got done building the temple, all right, in the reign of Xerxes right here. I think maybe it was actually during the reign of Darius. I have to go back and check, but it says in Ezra when they actually got done building the temple. Let's check that out real quick, because what I just read, Ezra 6, I think at the end of Ezra 6 it tells you when they actually got done building the temple. Yeah, the temple completed. Okay, the 6th year of the reign of Darius, right? So that's when they got done building the temple. It was in the reign of Darius. Okay, so let's get Ezra 8 though, because we're talking about restoring. It's not just about building, all right? We're talking about restoring. In Ezra 8, at the end of Ezra 8, all right? So Ezra 7 starts with his generation, all right? Him being called by Artaxerxes, all right? Him being called by Artaxerxes to go back to the land, all right? So, where are we at? Let's get down to the point here. Where do I want to start? Where do we want to start? So I thought he mentioned Artaxerxes in this chapter as well. I know it does in the last chapter, in chapter 7. Let's see. Does he mention? Here we go. Yeah. So I'll start with verse 1, jump down. These are now the chief of their fathers, and this is the genealogy of them that went up with me from Babylon in the reign of Artaxerxes the king. All right, so which Artaxerxes is that? Because there was a couple different Artaxerxes. It's not these two Xerxes, all right? This is Artaxerxes the second, all right? This is Artaxerxes the second here. This is the second generation, all right, that it talks about in Ezra and Nehemiah, all right? Because when you read Ezra, Nehemiah, first Ezra, second Ezra, Ezra and Nehemiah never interact with Zerubbabel or Jeshua or Haggai, Zechariah, all right? Because it's two different generations. All right. You have the first wave that went back. Then Ezra is in the either second or third, probably second wave, because that's the only ones we read about. But let's jump down in Ezra 8. All right. Jumping down to the end here. I'll start with verse 33. It says, "Now on the 4th day was the silver and the golden vessels weighed in the house of our God by the hand of Meremoth, the son of Uriah the priest. And with him was Eleazar, the son of Phinehas. And with them was Josabad, the son of Jeshua. And Noadiah, the son of Benwah, Levites. or Benui, however you want to pronounce that, by number and by weight, everyone, and the weight was written at that time, right? So they're bringing the holy vessels back, all right? The silver and the gold, all right? Either the original vessels or to replace the original vessels that were stolen, all right? Also, the children of those that had been carried away, which were come out of the captivity, offered burnt offerings unto the God of Israel. 12 bullocks for all Israel, right? 1 bullock for each tribe. 96 rams, 77 lambs, 12 he-goats for a sin offering. All right? Remember what Daniel says about making reconciliation for iniquity. All right? All this was a burnt offering unto the Lord. And they delivered the king's commissions to the king's lieutenants and to the governors on this side of the river, and they furthered the people and the house of God, right? So this, again, the prophecy is about making reconciliation for iniquity, all right? And to make an end of sins. And that's what you read in Ezra 9 and Ezra 10. They put away the strange wives that they had taken, and the sins that they were in, they put all that away. That's what Ezra 9 and Ezra 10 is about, all right? But also it says to seal up the vision and prophecy. Let's deal with that real quick. All right. To seal up the vision and prophecy. Here in 2 Ezra 7, and I will read verse 26 here. Now, as far as the timeline is concerned, I believe this is in between like Ezra, the book of Ezra, and the book of Nehemiah, as far as timeline is concerned. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure this is in between, timeline-wise, in between the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah. Behold, the time shall come that these tokens which I have told thee shall come to pass, and the bride shall appear. All right, the bride, as in when you read like Revelation 19, for example, it talks about the daughter of Zion being the bride, essentially. The church being the bride, when you read Ephesians 5. And she coming forth shall be seen, that now is withdrawn from the earth, and whosoever is delivered from the foresaid evils shall see my wonders. Verse 28, for my son Jesus shall be revealed with those that be with him, meaning the apostles, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. All right? So, Christ's going to come within 400 years. All right? After these years shall my son Christ die, and all men that have life, right? So all the apostles, all that generation that had life died after 400 years. But the point is, he would be born, he would come within 400 years. All right? That fits this timeline perfectly with Artaxerxes II. All right? And that 434 years, after that 434 years, he'd be cut off. Right? So that 434 years, let's say that was 399, thereabout. 434 years would have been, because it said within 400 years, right? That's why I'm saying 399. And it also fits with the Artaxerxes timeline here. Though I guess it could have been after Nehemiah got back, which is like in the 20th year of the Artaxerxes reign. But 434 years, that would take us from 399 to AD 35, right? And I'll keep reading on down here. That would be like AD 35 to his death. Oftentimes, people say it's like AD 31 or AD 33, but AD 35 it is the projection I'm giving here, because it says within 400 years, 399, right? If that was in 399 BC. There's good evidence to suggest, and I got a whole paper I need to read concerning astronomical bodies and him being born around 5 BC. So that actually lines up with Herod trying to kill him, because Herod didn't die until 4 BC, Herod the Great. And as far as AD 35 lines up, because Pontius Pilate was still governor of Judea at that time, right? So all that lines up, and that would put him about 40 when he died. It says in verse 26, I'll read that again. And after 62 weeks, that 434 years, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, right? He didn't die for himself. He died for the people. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Right? So when it says the people of the prince, all right, in this context, the Messiah is the prince, right? And it says the people of the prince shall destroy the city. All right? So what does it mean by that? And yeah, I guess you could say, and I guess this is the people who made Bible Hub, the reason why they actually ended up writing it with a lowercase p here instead of the capital P is because they're taking it to mean like the prince that shall come would be like a Roman king or whatever. But according to the context here, the prince that is already talked about is the Messiah, the prince, right? So just dealing with that context, because it works either way, but just dealing with that context, let's get Luke 19. How did the people of the prince destroy the city? I thought it was the Romans that destroyed the city, all right? Let's get this here in Luke chapter 19. Luke 19, and I'll start with verse 41. If my computer would stop being so slow. And Luke 19 and verse 41. Y'all bear with me for a second. All right. It says, and when he was come near, right, as we just passed, I don't know if you caught that. This is right after the triumphal entry, when he rides into Jerusalem on an ass. All right. And everyone sees that he's fulfilling the prophecy that's in Zechariah 9. All right. It said, and when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, he said, at least whenever I did this, maybe not for the miracles, but whenever I fulfilled Zechariah 9, the things which belong unto thy peace, right? Because that's the point of Christ, is to bring everlasting peace, right? That's what Luke 2 said. But now they are hid from thine eyes, but you can't see. But you can't see. And he's talking about Jerusalem. He's talking about mainly the leaders of Jerusalem, the Pharisees, the scribes, the chief priests. For the days shall come upon thee that thine enemies, the Romans, shall cast a trench about thee and compass thee round and keep thee in on every side, besiege the city, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. Right? So according to Christ, the reason why Jerusalem was destroyed is because they did not recognize him as the Messiah. Right? So in that context, the people of the prince did destroy the city. All right? It's the fault of, it's our own fault. Just like all of Deuteronomy 28. It's our own fault. All right? If we would have kept ourselves from our sins, none of this would have been happening to us. All right? And I'll just prove that real quick. As far as the blood of Christ, whose hands is it on? All right. In Matthew, it's Matthew 26, Matthew 27. Let's go with Matthew 27. I think that's what it is. This is when he's being crucified. Let's see. Here you go. Where is it at? Here we go. Verse 20. I'll read verse 24. Starting with 24. When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person, see ye to it. Right? So Pilate, if it was up to Pilate, he would have freed Christ. All right? He didn't have the envy of Christ that, his own people had, that the chief priests, the elders, the Pharisees had, the Sadducees had. Then answered all the people and said, his blood be on us and on our children. Right? That's why in Luke 19, Christ, knowing what's going to happen, being a prophet himself, says, it's the city, Jerusalem. Because you rejected me, now the whole city is going to be destroyed, right? So the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood of the heathen, a flood of Romans. All right. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So that tells you what the flood is. All right. And I believe it's Psalms 124 that uses the word flood to talk about the heathen. All right. Talk about war, armies. All right. You talking about desolations though. Talking about desolations. And I'll get that back in Luke 21 after I finish reading this. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, right? So according to, that's how you get the 490 days by the week. By the way, excuse me. That's how you get these 70 weeks, all right? Because you have 69 weeks here, right? You have 7 weeks, which was from Cyrus to Darius, them 49 years. Then you have 62 weeks, which was from Ezra's generation to Christ's generation, all right? The 434 years. Then you have the confirming the covenant with many for 1 week. That would be the gospel of Christ being preached. He did his ministry for about 7 years. All right. Oftentimes in the secular world, or I guess in mainstream Christianity world as well, they will say for 3 years, just because they try to add up all the days it's in the book of John. But John said that all the different works that he did, all the things that he did for the gospel, for the Most High, it couldn't be told in all the different books, right? So John did not chronicle every single thing that he did, all right? He told you straight up he didn't. So it was about 7 years when he taught. So with many for 1 week, as I said. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, right? So he did that by offering up his body once and for all. You read about that in Hebrews, right? The whole book of Hebrews is making the case that Christ offered up his body once and for all so that, we could stop doing the animal sacrifice, all right? And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, right? Destroy the city because of the hypocrisies within. Even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate, right? So as he said earlier, the end of the war, desolations are determined, or unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. I'll get that in Luke 21 real quick, all right? Because all this is lining up too well for this to be talking about anything else. Other people may have different interpretations. I know people that hate Christ, people that are Old Testament Israelites try to come with different interpretations, but it really don't make any sense any other way. When you actually read what it's saying here, it can't be talking about anything else. All right. Luke 21. And see, this is why you gotta know history though. All right. Because like I said, generally I knew, because I heard years and years ago when somebody had pointed out, I ain't necessarily gonna name names or whatever, but when somebody was teaching a lesson that I was watching, or I probably wasn't in the presence in the literal presence, I was probably watching it online, when they had said that these 70 weeks each day represents a year. And from then I was just like, oh, it is talking about generally from the time of the Persians to the time of Christ, around 490 years. I didn't look too much into it after that. All right. Until here in the past year or so. And I couldn't understand it. Right. That's why I held off of it last week. But the Most High revealed it to me. All praise to the Most High. He revealed it to me this past week as I was meditating on it, that there's a reason why there's a gap here, right? Between the 7 weeks, which is 49 years, and 62 weeks, which is 434 years, right? And it is the difference. The gap there is the gap between the generations of Zerubbabel's generation, Jeshua's generation, Zechariah, Haggai's generation, and Ezra's generation, Nehemiah's generation. And I think maybe Mordecai was in that first generation. Maybe he bridges the gap. I'm not quite sure, but around that same time. Anyway. But he talks about that determined shall be poured upon the desolate, right? Talking about what's determined in Luke 21. I'll start with 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh, right? So he's talking about desolations. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereunto. He said, look, you can't keep the Passover here anymore. You can't keep the Pentecost here anymore. You can't keep the Feast of Tabernacles here anymore. Why? Because the temple would be destroyed. For these be for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Right? And as it says here, that determined. All right. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. Right? So when you read the curses of Deuteronomy 28, it talks about what the Israelites did in the siege. And they did this during the time of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And they also did it during the time that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. They ate children. Right? They got so hungry that they ate their children. Right? A lot of people that weren't Israelites, that aren't Israelites, may choose to die instead of eating their children. But when you read historically, that's what Israelites did. They ate their children in sieges. Multiple times, by the way. Multiple different sieges. They did that. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, right? The people within the city. And shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Again, that determined. All right, so that's all I wanted out of that as far as the things that had to be fulfilled. Desolations are determined, right? And that's what Christ was elaborating on. All right. In another one, he talks about, when you see what Daniel talked about in the land, right? And Matthew 24, I think, is when he said that. But I don't want to skip over the point as far as like, let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. I've talked about that before, as far as like the mountains that are like Mount Sinai, Mount Egypt, or the mountains in Egypt, I should say, that go down into like Ethiopia and things like that. All right. That's what he's talking about there. But that's not really the point of what I'm getting into here. The point is these 70 weeks, right? Originally started from the declaration of Cyrus to the declaration of Darius, right? Gap. Then from Ezra and Nehemiah's generation to Christ's generation, right? That's basically all this is going into. All right, so the rest of the book of Daniel, y'all, like, time has kind of caught up to me, so I'm gonna have to like do this quickly, kind of skip around a bit. I just wanted to focus on that and give y'all understanding on that. Partially for selfish reasons, I will admit, just because I wanted some understanding on it, so I meditated on it this past week. But it's also important because I haven't watched other people break it down, but I've heard Old Testament only Israelites talking about, their somehow they break it down to because they hate Christ and they try to take the Messiah out of it. I'm sure because they hate Christ, so everything they do is about hating him. But anyway, Daniel 10, I'll start with 1. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar, and the thing was true. But the time appointed was long, and he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. 3 full weeks, right? 21 days. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And in the 24th day of the first month, the 24th day, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel. I believe Hiddekel is the Tigris. Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz, right? So as you read this description, you see it's the same description in Revelation 1 of Jesus Christ, right? Which makes sense if he just received this prophecy that Gabriel explained to him, all right, about the Messiah coming, and now the Messiah visits Daniel, right? It only makes sense. His body also was like the beryl, right? As far as he had a green garment on. And his face as the appearance of lightning. He had power and light around his face. Like when you read Ezekiel, I'm reading Ezekiel again. And I talked about this whenever we covered the prophet Ezekiel. That it talks about when the Lord appears like, it's like fire, it's like light, right? There's a brightness, right? A glow. Shining, all right, and his eyes as lamps of fire. Again, the description in Revelation 1. also says the same thing, right? Um, also, his eyes were red with wine, as it says in Genesis 49. And his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, right? So in Revelation 1, it says brass burned in a furnace. Here it says polished brass is just dark brown, right? That's all it's going into. And the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude, right? He spake loud, right? He spake loudly. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, right? It was just Daniel. For the men that were with me saw not the vision, right? There were people there, but it's just Daniel who saw the vision. But a great quaking fell upon them so that they fled to hide themselves. You see that right there? And I talked about this last week on Learning the Word, that, when the Lord reveals things to you, it may be that there are people around you, but only you can understand what you're seeing. All right? I said that in regards to, well, it wasn't last week on Learning the Word. It was a couple weeks ago. Whenever I was talking about the voice that Nebuchadnezzar heard from heaven. But anyway. Therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. Right? He said it was like he decayed. Right? That's corruption he's talking about. Right? Like he could collapse in on himself, basically. Yet heard I the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face, and my face toward the ground. And behold, a hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thy heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. All right? So, it doesn't necessarily say this is the same man that appeared to him here. It just said a hand touched him, right? So it could be like this is an angel speaking, but Christ visited him, then the angel talked to him. But more than likely this is, Christ himself speaking here, all right? And I say that because if it was Gabriel that come back to him, he would have said Gabriel, because he already knew Gabriel by name, right? In chapter 8 and in chapter 9, all right? But he didn't say this is Gabriel, all right? He said, Fear not, Daniel, from the first day, I just read this. From the first day that thou didst set thy heart to understand and to chasten thyself before God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. Right? So some people will say, well, this can't be Christ because it talks about the kingdom. It talks about the kingdom of Persia withstood him 21 days. He couldn't battle them in the spirit. Yet these are the same people that say Christ was Solomon, right? And Solomon obviously was not the most spiritually strong at that time, at that point. So why are you sitting here saying that because this man is not the strongest in the spirit, then he can't be Christ? It's a weird mentality that people have, and it doesn't even necessarily say that like it was one person that held him up. In fact, it said it was the kings of Persia in the spirit, right? So this is one man trying to fight off potentially armies of people by himself, and not even necessarily say that he couldn't do it, but that Michael came to help him, right? But anyway, he come to talk to Daniel. And when he had spoken such words unto me, I set my face toward the ground, and I became dumb. And behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men touched my lips. All right, so this may even be a different person right here, all right, or a different angel or whatever. Then I opened my mouth and spake and said unto him that stood before me, O my Lord, by the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? But for as for me, straightway there remain no strength in me, neither is there breath left in me. Right? So Daniel said, how can I talk to, these how can I talk to y'all in the spirit, right, when I have no strength in me at all? right? I don't have the ability to do this. I don't have the strength or the power to do this right now. Then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of a man, and he strengthened me and said, he strengthened me and said, O man greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be unto thee. Be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I come unto thee? Do you know why I came to you? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael, your prince. Right? So, this is actually showing like very very heavy spiritual things as far as what has to happen in the spirit for the will of God to be done, and that is that every people group and possibly every individual in the spirit has an angel or angels that are fighting for their will to be done, yet they have to be overcome, right? It's very heavy things, very deep things, right? So we're not necessarily going to dwell on that too much, and we just know that at the beginning of the chapter, it's Christ, because it's the same depiction that is in Revelation 1 that appears to Daniel, right? But as far as the whole rest of the chapter, it makes it seem like in this chapter that's multiple people coming to Daniel, right? It could just be the same man who's coming in the spirit, right? Anywho. Chapter 11, I'm not going to get into too much. I'm not going to read the whole thing as I did the past couple chapters. But understand that it's talking about the transition from Persia to Greece, and from Greece to like the different factions that made up the Greeks. And I guess I'll start with verse 1. I in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. And a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. Right? So when it says the 3 kings in Persia and the 4th, I'm not quite sure which kings he's talking about there. All right? Because if we take the 2 verses to be consecutive and like go with one another, then like the last one, Darius the Third, as it says, the last ruler of the empire, he's the one who fell to Alexander. All right. With Artaxerxes II ruling for 47 years, he may have been the richest. All right. But I'll keep reading here. The mighty king, we talked about that before. That's Alexander. Alexander the Greek, oftentimes called Alexander the Great. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. And we talked about that last week, I believe. And shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. And I suppose the week before, because it talks about that in chapter 7 as well. And not to his posterity, right? Not to his seed, not to his children, nor according to his dominion, which he ruled, right? So not his whole empire. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. And we talked about that, it being split up 4 ways. And the king of the south shall be strong, Ptolemy, the Ptolemaic dynasties, and one of his princes. And he shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together. All right. So the king of the south would be the Ptolemaic dynasty, as I just mentioned. All right. For the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. All right. So the king of the north would be the Seleucid dynasties. All right. And I have written here, all right, as far as individuals that it's talking about. All right. It says, but she shall not retain the power of the arm. This is Cleopatra, by the way. All right. This is Cleopatra that it's talking about. She was a member of she was a family member of the Ptolemaic dynasties. All right. Neither shall he stand nor his arm, but she shall be given up and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. So I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna read all this, but as I said, the Ptolemaic dynasties would be like King of the South, and that's Egypt, by the way. King of the North would be the Syrians, which are the Seleucids. Prominent names mentioned here: Ptolemy II, Antiochus III would be king of the North. All right, and it goes on to talk about Antiochus Epiphanes down here. I'm sure Antiochus Epiphanes. Where are we at? Here we go. Verse 30. That's when it starts talking about Antiochus. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Right? We read about that when we started talking about Antiochus. I believe in chapter 8, if I'm not mistaken, when we talked about that last week. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice. Right? That's the significant thing here. All right. And they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Right. So that would be the heathen coming into the temple and setting up idolatry. All right. That's the abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. Right. So that's the Maccabean family, called such after Judas Maccabeus, who led them initially. Then they were led by Jonathan, their brother, Jonathan Caddis, maybe. And then after him, they were led by Simon, who became the high priest. Simon, called Thassi. And that's where you get the term Hasmonean family as well. But it's the same thing, though. They that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword. All of them died in war. All the brothers, all the Maccabean brothers died in war. All right? And by flame, by captivity, and by spoil, many days. All right? So, right. So, I'm not going to get into the rest of this. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about the Syrian wars is what it's generally called in the secular world. All right? But really the Seleucid Ptolemaic wars is how I know. I looked up Seleucid Ptolemaic wars, and here's what popped up: Syrian wars. Right. So if you want to know about that, look into that. First Syrian war from 274 to 271. Right. So starting around 274 BC, and they said there were 6 of them. All right. Ending around 168 BC, as you see here. All right. So that's what Daniel chapter 11 is talking about. People often talk about Daniel chapter 11 as if it's talking about like future prophecy. All this really has happened already. Now, the same as any Old Testament prophecies concerning like judgments or concerning pretty much anything. I've talked about this a lot. As far as the scripture are double to that which is, or the words of wisdom, I should say, are double to that which is. If a modern country or people continue in the same sins as ancient peoples and countries, then they will receive the same judgments as those peoples and countries, right? So I've talked about that before. So if anybody is as proud, arrogant, and ungodly as Antiochus Epiphanes, then they will receive the same judgment, right? Death in a horrific manner from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what Antiochus Epiphanes got. All right. Anywho, Daniel chapter 12. And we'll close it out here. I will read all of this chapter because it's heavy and it's not very long. All right. So starting with Daniel 12 and 1. Now, this is talking about last days. This is talking about end time prophecy. All right. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So at that time, as in, if we're taking from the context of the last chapter, in the time of the Maccabees, shall Michael stand up. the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, right? So, and when you read Second Maccabees, you read about angels out there on the battlefield helping the Maccabees, right? Helping Judas Maccabeus, right? Against the Greeks. All right. But it also says there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, that troublous time, thy people, meaning the Israelites, shall be delivered. Everyone that shall be found written in the book. Everyone that shall be found written in the book of life. All right. So, don't get it twisted. This is talking about the last days. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Right? So, come judgment day, there will be a resurrection of the dead. Not necessarily all the dead, because it said, and many of them. All right? It didn't say everybody that's ever died, but many people that have died. Some will be resurrected to be in the kingdom. Some will be resurrected to be casted into the lake of fire. All right? That's all up to the judgment of God. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. All right? What did it say in Isaiah about a man being more precious than fine gold? Right? This is talking about the same thing. Zechariah talking about, the 1/3 being brought through the fire, like fine gold. In Psalm 19, it talked about in the apostles of Christ and the disciples of Christ and the followers of the Most High, those who keep his laws, would be a tabernacle for the sun, right? As in their light would shine. Right? Christ said, let your light so shine among men. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end, right? The understanding will be sealed until these last days. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased, right? So many running to and fro. Look how easy it is to travel the globe right now. All you need is some money and permission from your state, right? Passport. And you could fly from one end of the earth to the other in a matter of days. All right? That's unheard of. In a matter of 2 days, 2.5 days, 3 days, you can fly all the way to the other side of the planet and come back in a matter of like 3 days. All right? Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. All right? Everyone has access to all the information that's ever been collected right now at your fingertips. That's all you got to do. All right? Just look it up. They say, look it up on Google. Right? Knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. And you see that constantly, especially in the book of Revelation. Times, time, and a half. And we talked about that. When we talked about Daniel chapter 7, right? A time, let's make it simple, make it plain. A century, 100 years, times, that would be 2 centuries, 300 years, and a half, right? 50, all right? 50 years, a half a century, right? And that's what you see in the book of Revelation, all right? It constantly talks about like 3.5 years, which again translates to 350 years, right? 3.5 years in the book of Revelation would be like 3.5 centuries. It's the same thing we see here, all right? And that would be from the beginning of the colonial period to the end of the colonial period, the end of Jim Crow, right? It was around, you can say from, let's say 1620, that's when the Mayflower came over here, to 1970, right? That'd be like the end of the civil rights movement. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished, right? And that's when you start seeing people waking up, like the old One West School, for example, and in New York. came around like 1969. So you can say like 1619, 1969, whatever. That 350-year period of colonization, just like the Greeks did, by the way. All right. So there is that same the same like judgment coming around as a ring, right? And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end, right? So he said, hey, it's too late, Daniel. We done showed you enough. Hey, it's time for the end. All right? It's going to be sealed till the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Right? The wise shall understand. Purified, made white, and tried. That's what I talked about when I said like Zechariah. He talked about the 1/3 coming through the fire, right? Being tried through adversity, purified, made perfect. Right? Again, what Daniel 9 said is about ending iniquity, right? I ain't even get anything on that, but there's a great scripture on that here in Hebrews 2. And I guess in John, like all the apostles talked about it actually. About destroying the works of the devil, destroying sin. So Hebrews 2, because I mentioned the book of Hebrews, so I guess I'll go to Hebrews. Hebrews 2, because again, the whole book of Hebrews is about the establishment of the new covenant. It's about how Christ offered up his body once and for all to be the sacrifice to replace the burnt offerings and the lambs, about reconciliation, concerning reconciliation, I should say. All right. So Hebrews 2, where is it at right here? Okay. I'll start with verse 14. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil, right? And deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage, right? So that's the whole point of purifying the people, making an end of sins, right? Delivering, as I said earlier, what does it say? Deliver thy people. At that time, thy people shall be delivered. All right. Christ's going to send his angels to gather the elect. All right. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination to make it desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. All right. Let's see that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days, 5 and 30 days. Right. So again, this is talking about the time period of the Greeks from I don't know the specific years, but from the time that Antiochus set up the idols in the temple to, the time that the Maccabees restored it and whatnot. So notice who do you say this was? The man in linen? Yeah, the man clothed in linen. He said, and so this is separate from like the last days prophecies. All right. He said, and from the time the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, right? So he's adding to that because he's talking about similar to like Matthew 24 and Luke 21 and Mark 13 is all the same thing. When they asked Christ a couple different questions, right? They asked him about when will the destruction of the temple be basically, and when will be his return, right? So he's trying to answer both, going back and forth. Hey, the destruction of the temple will be around this time, and the deliverance of the people will be around this time. So it's the same thing here. They're trying to explain to Daniel, hey, here is what it's going to be like in the time of the Greeks, and the time that the temple is destroyed, and the last days when the people are delivered. All right. So I just wanted to make that clear. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to 1,305 and 30 days. Okay, I just read that. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest, meaning die, and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Right? So Daniel is coming back in these last days. Whether that means he, is born again into a new body here in the last days, or he's one of those, that is, as it says here, awakened to everlasting life, that's up to the Lord to decide. All right. But he will be here, as it says, at the end of the days. So with all that, I'll go ahead and close it out with the benediction, as they call it, in the book of Mark 14. And I will start with verse 3. Just bear with me for a second, folks, while I pull it up. And we'll go ahead and close it out. Mark 14, starting with verse 3. It says, "And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious, and she brake the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, Why was this wasted ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence, and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. And Jesus said, Let her alone, why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever you will, you may do them good. But me ye have not always. She had done what she could. She has come beforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she had done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her." So with that, all praises to the Most High for that sister doing a wonderful thing for our Lord. And I will say all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. I do so in the name of his only begotten Son. I do so by his Holy Ghost. With all that being said, I'm going to say shalom and let God be magnified.